we're obligated as a high school run podcast to to make a disclaimer that this is not us encouraging you to probably try to make an atomic bomb. We're not telling you
Yeah.
that. We're just trying to encourage you to go out and take risks, not risks that will make the world improve.
Okay, so hi guys. Welcome to the first podcast of the year 2025-26 or the academic year 2025-26. My name is Vyom Gupta and I'm the president, the first president of the FSA club. And with me is Aditya Agarwal.
Hi guys,
So
I'm the this
Aditya,
year. I'm this year's symposium president. You to take them through the topic.
yeah, okay, so our topic is something really cool, which is basically we're going to be running through innovation through the years. And we're going to be seeing how innovation, tech, science, like all of these topics, because like we're a STEAM club, has kind of developed over the years. And we decided to take it around 100 years back. So we'll be starting in the 1920s and like seeing, I think like we'll be taking like a period of around 10 years. And like each year we'll be like seeing how we have like kind of developed as a
Right.
species. Yeah.
So the main way we're structuring our of this podcast is we're going to explore a few key topics. We're going to talk about like Vyob said, we're going to talk about computing. We're going to talk about advances in biomedicine, advances in maybe the space race later on. Yeah, so some really cool stuff. So around 1920s to 30s, there are a couple of key inventions that are important even to this day. We want to start off with I think most of us have heard of Alexander Fleming's invention of penicillin. And penicillin is really important for a couple of reasons. Being the predominantly used antibiotic, penicillin is just completely revolutionized medicine, and it's still used today. The fact that it's still used today is just testament to how large of an impact it had on the medicine industry. Back then, there weren't many readily available medicines to cure maybe to serve the purpose that antibiotics today serve, like fever and stuff like that. Penicillin solved exactly for that.
And you know that a really cool thing about penicillin was actually found by accident, or at least the story that kind of goes around its discovery, which is basically the fact that he kind of left these test tubes, or not test tubes, like these petri dishes out in his lab, which had bacteria on them. And he went out for some work, I think for like a week. And he came back and like he saw there's this fungus growing on it, and he was actually quite like surprised to see that it actually ended up killing the bacteria. And while it wasn't actually him, like though most of the credit was given to Alexander Fleming. I think it was a research team in Britain which kind of was able to like extract that fungus and make it into a real vaccine. And this kind of actually shows us something really important in science also, that sometimes like credit goes not exactly where it's due, because like there's so many people and like so many people who kind of like back one thing, and they all kind of play like pivotal roles in kind of shaping the world we have around us right now. Don't you
Right.
agree?
Yeah, definitely. I think adding on to the story of penicillin, I think that just even when Alexander Fleming himself found like came to a realization that maybe what he's found is really cool, he just did not even try to convince people that of his invention, because just the idea of isolating penicillin in his mind was so hard, and Vyom said, it happened by luck. He was just unsure if he could ever replicate it. So despite having stumbled upon the invention and probably the greatest invention in biomedicine in the last 100 years, um he was reluctant to convince anyone, and he was only fully recognized for his efforts in 1999 or something. So it's actually it goes to show, like Vyom said, just the nature of science. The next topic we want to talk about is rockets, actually. But not rockets in the way that we'd in the way that we're used to. We're used to these super sleek rockets that now even relaunchable rockets, which is pretty cool. But currently in the 1920s, we're very, very far from that. So what we see right now is Robert Goddard's liquid fueled rocket, which at the time just completely blew away everybody, that anybody that could get their hands on a newspaper, anybody that could get their hands on or maybe tune into the radio, because just the idea of such of a vehicle that could go that's so high, and just the idea of maybe even escaping a planet was was mostly like amaze the population, but was also a pretty scary idea for some people. Yeah, I think we should move on to the next invention. And I think people really aren't aware about this because like the invention of rockets is normally associated with like the 1940s and stuff like that. But actually the first demonstration of a rocket happened in the 1920s, and this was John Logy's liquid fuel rocket. And even though like few would consider it an actual like rocket launch because it was only 2.5 seconds and it only went to like 80 meters in the air, this legitimately was the first rocket launch that humanity was going to see. And like we know today, in a long like in a series of what were to be many rocket launches. So even though like this demonstration is very dissimilar to what we're like accustomed to as the normal rocket launch, it's just very significant in our history because it's the first time that we ever dreamt of like like touching the sky.
That's so cool. And like I was actually just thinking about it. Why do you think humans ever like even wanted to build a rocket? Like that's so fascinating. Like it's almost like it's almost like we are like an empire. Like humanity itself is kind of like this empire which is not done conquering. Like can you imagine like many years before, forget the 1920s, let's say like we were in the 1600s, 1500s, and like we're just sitting on the coast and looking at the sea and just like seeing this vast expanse. And we were like, shit, like we didn't know there were like continents, we didn't know there were places around. And then just one day there was this guy who was like, damn, I just want to conquer, I just want to travel the sea. I might just fall off the cliff as they or just fall off the sea because they thought it was flat. And like they just took off, and there was just these brave people who just like went out and like wanted to find new land. And I feel this is like this the point in humanity where we like started, like we had already like by the 1920s we had already seen all the continents, we were getting a rough idea of how the earth might look. And it's now again we were thinking that wait, there must be more. They sat down and they looked up at the skies and they're like, whoa, I want to conquer that. And like we're still at the stage where we are like trying to conquer the vast expanses out there.
I think it's very true that humanity's always been like obsessed with conquering and like what's beyond and like not only settling in the pot that we're living. And I think this is why like our obsession with like the sky and the stars above actually uh, actually I think it predates like conquering continents and stuff like that, because there was a point in time in which like humans didn't know that there were further continents, that there were further like land masses, but we could always look up at night at the night sky and be like, there is something out there, and we never knew what those like shining stars were, or what exactly the things like shining in the sky were. And I think like an obsession with what exactly is in the sky like predates to like ancient Greece, and like we like even in like ancient India, like we see in most classics there's always some philosopher, some scientist talking about like an obsession with like reaching the sky. So I think even before like man's attempt to like conquer the world and man's attempt to like find every single continent, I think our obsession with the
I'm
universe.
actually Aditya, like I'm sorry to like break your flow there, but I'm actually so glad you brought this up because I was just thinking about that like brought about something really interesting. Don't you think mankind's progress is also kind of lopsided? Like the fact that you brought it up kind of brought about this really interesting topic in my mind. Like if you think about it, right now at this point, we have gone and like we have explored like so many stars and like galaxies, but just look, we have not explored our oceans well. Like compare it to those times you were talking about where we look up at the stars, but we didn't even know how many continents were there. Like it's so lopsided. Sometimes we focus on like these like particular parts of that full steam, like our club, like science, technology, engineering, art, and math. In that particular way, sometimes humanity as a whole has just concentrated so heavily on a particular topic, kind of leading to this lopsided growth, which is extremely fascinating because we kind of like leave out the essential stuff that is here on earth to explore. What do you feel about that?
I think what you're bringing up is like a very like commonly expressed concern of like the marine biology community, and actually like most people who like believe in prioritizing our blue planet. Like the entire characteristic of like being the blue planet is like at its heart is our oceans and is our seas. But I think like NASA recently has for um like ramped
Yeah,
up
yeah. NASA
in research.
and Elon Musk, like he's also
Yeah.
started something to the
Yeah,
I'm
so
forgetting
I
the
think I
naming
I
of
think
it.
there's this program called like Server C, and like obviously there's not that much funding, there's not that much like human capital going into like server, but they're definitely getting somewhere. So I completely agree with your idea of like we're not like giving as much funding, not as much attention to the sea, because like you'd see like a lot of people talk about, actually, like we just don't know what's down there. Like there could be so many like things that are like at the depths of the ocean, but for some reason we just haven't been as fascinated with that. And at least in my mind, I just connected that to like the obviousness of like looking up at like the black sky and seeing like these like sparkling like shining stars, and like that being a little more like attractive
Fascinating.
than maybe
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
like blue
And I
stuff just
just,
floating down. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Yeah.
you wanna take us through
Yeah,
the entire
sure.
nuclear
Quantum.
inventions, nuclear
Okay,
nuclear.
yeah, sure. I like nuclear fission too. Why not? And so basically around this time, actually, there's not much going on with nuclear fission. We hadn't actually done it for the first time, but I feel just theoretically, there were a group of scientists who came together in the 1920s and were able to like understand how the like at least a rough model of how the atom works and etc. I think it was Hahn, Meitner, and Strassman. I might be pronouncing that horribly wrong, but
Okay.
yeah, and so they came together, and I feel that's also something really important, right? Like for any practical breakthrough or any like practicals, like how we have in our schools also, there needs to be some theory like that kind of gives us its basis and kind of helps it flourish. And if that theory isn't proper, like where are we going?
I think this theory is going to be particularly useful, not just in technology, but also in a couple of events around 1945. Um, but you want to talk about quantum mechanics?
Okay, yeah. So quantum mechanics, I'm sure most of you all like who are interested in like physics and all, and the people who are like we're kind of catering to with this podcast already know what Schrodinger's theory is. It's like the most used thing for like science. It's like thrown around everywhere.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
like
it's really overused.
yeah,
Like
yeah. And you
I
feel
have
too
this, I
in
have
like
this friend that hasn't taken physics, and he keeps using like wow, like Schrodinger's
yeah,
cat,
yeah.
and he just does not understand
I
what he's talking
totally
about.
get you.
Yeah,
And you know the funny thing is, right? It's so easy to understand, but still you feel so intellectual. So at this time, there's this guy called Schrödinger, and he comes up with this equation that kind of helps us understand, which is like this is commonly explained through through the two cats, which is basically like where I'm just gonna explain it again because why not? Where there are two cats and like I mean there's one cat,
there's
but
one cat.
yeah, there's one cat, and there's a bomb placed inside which kind of releases a chemical, and just at the time, like there's a 50% chance that the bomb goes off, and just before it goes off, that you enter something known as a superposition, where according to the knowledge or the information for the observer, the cat is both alive and dead at the same time. And that actually applies really well with this was like a cool analogy that was used by him or like used by him to like understand the topic of basically as to why uh electrons kind of have different spins, or like electrons kind of never exhibit the same quantity like quality, like they either have a half spin up or half spin down no matter where they're located. And this kind of breaks fundamental physics because uh, Einstein kind of says that nothing can break the sound of nothing can break the speed of light, but the speed at which these electrons seem to be communicating as such was faster than that, because the electron spin would be up and the other one which was connected to it would be down no matter how far apart they were placed, which was like this at this point there was just theory, but like when the practicals come up and like we start connecting to a broader basis of physics, we'll see, which is pretty interesting.
So I think before like we move into the actual post-war revolution period, that's around like 1946. I think Vyom and I want to take a step back and probably discuss why like what is the answer to the question, why does war drive innovation? Because like it's a very commonly like discussed idea that like during wartime, like regardless of how large the war may be, like during wartime in war regions is when like most innovation thrives. Like this is seen in science, this is seen in medicine, this is seen in like even like sociology. Vyom, why do you think this happens?
Yeah, okay, so that's actually a really interesting topic. And I feel like what is war? Like war is kind of like this like feel like it's a like I feel like whenever I think of war, it's kind of like this competition where like, oh, where you're kind of trying to show that you're like kind of better than the other person, and like it's this competition to be better so that you can overpower the other party you're kind of competing with. And I feel that's so essential to like innovation, right? Because if you think about it, in order to be better than someone, you can't just do something at a larger scale. Like imagine if I'm like trying to do like if I try to do integration, but I just keep doing more addition questions, that's not going to work out. Like you will have to like learn, and you'll actually have to develop like a certain method, or different approach, a smarter approach, and that's exactly what innovation is. It's kind of upskilling yourself, and that's really essential to like any kind of work. And I'm really glad you brought this up, because like I was thinking about World War One. Like we have kind of like skipped it in the range of like 1920s to 1930s, but like I think it happened when did World War One start?
Yeah,
Like
1950, 1914 is 18.
okay, yeah. So I think it was around that time that tanks were first developed, and like
Yeah.
we missed that, but that's so cool. Like think about it, because it was one of the driving forces that actually kind of led the British to like win the war towards the end. I
Right.
feel where the Germans basically like they had soldiers, everyone had soldiers, and like they could fight with guns and whatever they had. But imagine like having that kind of drive to build like this monstrosity of like a big kind of vehicle which is like armored and can't like does not let bullets through and can shoot out these massive like this massive ammo. That's so ingenious. I mean, that sounds so basic, but at that time it must have been so like creative and something that kind of broke the limits. And that's basically what we are doing right now also. Like imagine like in the future people look back and say, whoa, this was so basic. But it's every step is like a way towards a better and more innovative future.
Right. I think what Hume is also talking about is this idea of like urgency being created. Because like unlike right now where both of us have no like compulsion to like get out and innovate, or like any time that isn't a war, like there really isn't a compulsion for like the scientists, for the tech, like for the experts, for the engineers to like actually innovate. But like during wartime there is almost a sort of obligation and a sort of like a sense of necessity that you should like come up with something novel. So whether like this might be like the Panzer tanks that the Germans came up with, or like the British tanks that came up like that were innovated in World War One, or maybe just like anything. Like it could be like mustard gas, just like any like scientific innovation. At least most of them are driven out as a source of like a necessity, and this is largely true in our time period too. Like in the backdrop of World War Two, like another reason is because like just governments and there's so many private industries are heavily encouraged to like invest in R&D, because during war there is a definite reward to succeeding. Um, I like
That's
the
so
person
true.
that
Yeah,
comes to
I
yeah.
totally. In fact, that budget point, like this will come up later, but I'm so happy you brought it up because like I was just thinking about it right now. Is the fact that like you know that like after World War, like after the space race, like that's way in the future we'll be getting to that. But after the space race, like even NASA's budget was cut heavily. Like all of the funding that they had was kind of like on all of their space exploration, and that at the time where they made their biggest jumps or like leaps in space exploration was mainly driven because of Cold War funding. And like after that, they kind of fell off. Like we can see it right now. Private industries are kind of ruling the space.
That's really interesting. Like I never knew that the US government would like sort of exploit NASA almost to like project themselves like as more powerful on the international stage. And I never thought that they would like cut funding. But I think that just proves like the point we're talking about, that only during wartime did like the US government see the necessity to fund like NASA, but like more relevant to our time period, like even the Manhattan Project. I think the Manhattan Project, like I think Vyom is going to introduce to you all, was extremely like breakthrough moment in like nuclear physics, in just war, in like international relations. Just it was such a crucial part, and it's important to keep in mind that this it was shaped by the backer of World War Two. So do you want to take us through the Manhattan Project?
Yes, surely. So, guys, I'm pretty sure at least when we release this video podcast, there was like a really cool movie called Oppenheimer. I'm not sure if all of you have watched it. And after this podcast, I really like suggest this movie to you all. Like, you all should watch it. But yeah, it kind of like runs us through how about this guy called Oppenheimer, and like how he was kind of leading this team, which goes to I think Los Alamos in New Mexico. and they basically sat down together, and through, like, I think years, like almost 3 4 years of hardcore and rigorous, like, theoretical discussions and like eh, uh, practicals, where they kind of try to understand how it would work, or how it would actually work, the functionality of the bomb. They were able to first test it on US soil, which is in Los Alamos, and then obviously we know about Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And something that's really cool about Oppenheimer is that later on, like, he was not, like, really appreciated for the work that he did, and that's kind of sad. But I mean, not that he's not appreciated, but like he was kind of seen as a public enemy. And but
Right.
yeah, sure. Aditya, would you like to add
Yeah,
something?
I just wanted to add a little more about like Oppenheimer's like perception, and this I think this adds to our entire discussion about like how people that contribute to science are viewed, because we've seen that like people in science aren't given as much credit. Like oftentimes we just will not know like who invented a particular thing that we might use on a daily basis. But I think Oppenheimer was like the
Yeah,
start
one
of,
second.
yeah,
Do you even know who invented the air conditioning, bro? That's so important in our life. And like that's so essential to almost every Mumbai car like me. But like we never think twice, bro. That's so important. And
that is fun. But yeah, going back to the Manhattan Project, I think the Manhattan Project is honestly one of our best examples of how far we've come, because just in like just looking at this time period, like looking from 1920, where we discussed like the entire like conceptualization of the atom, we went to like the point of like 1945, where we could fully harness um the power of a nuclear bomb. And we've seen, and the entire discussion about like how much physical suffering it cost is obviously really really bad, but just the existence of the atomic bomb and the science it took to get there, the large amounts of collaboration, just goes to show how far we came as a civilization. And that's 80 years back. I think there's a lot. I think by the time we reach the
uh,
present, there's going to be a lot. Yeah,
Aditya, I'd actually like to add something really cool to this. Like, there's this story that's like passed around a lot. That when he was first like practically kind of making the bomb, when he was placing, I think, U-235. I'm not sure about the number, the uranium isotope in.
235 is
Like
right.
he was Yeah, he was like trying to like, place it around the core of the bomb. And it's often said that he wasn't sure of his theory. Like, there were two outcomes of his theory. One was that the world kind of like collapses and like explodes, implodes. And one is where like it kind of turns out to be the bomb that he wanted. And he did this with like his bare hand. He like put it in. And that's so cool. That kind of shows that you have to take these risks sometimes to like progress, like how we talked about those people who went out in those ships. They did not know whether the world was flat or not, whether they would fall off the cliff. This was kind of like another one of those moments where he wasn't sure of the outcome, but he just went for it, and like you can see it kind of made our world better or not.
Right.
That's all.
Two things. I think we're obligated as a high school run podcast to like to make a disclaimer that this is not us encouraging you to like probably try to make an atomic bomb. Like we're not telling you
Yeah.
that. We're just trying to encourage you to like go out and like take risks, not risks that will make the world improve. But yeah, I think the entire like I think the entire idea of like risk, and I'm surprised we haven't discussed it yet. I think risk is at the heart of like innovation, and I think like all of the other maybe causes war, just like pure curiosity that drives innovation. And that has got us so far as a civilization. I think risk is actually at the heart of that. I think if nobody ever took a
That's
risk,
such
if
a
like
cool conclusion. Yeah,
yeah,
I totally.
yeah, I think if like nobody ever took a risk, if nobody ever thought that I could be wrong, but like it's fine, like I should try. I think if we didn't have that kind of spirit, I don't think we'd have gotten this far as a civilization. And I think that's a really cool thing to think about.
Yeah, like most of the time people think that science is like this nerdy thing where people are just sitting down in one place and like, I don't know, like looking into books and formulas. But it's kind of like a battlefield, right? Like you're taking a risk every moment. You're kind of pushing forward the frontiers of like a full species or like universe, probably like not as glorious as not as gloriously like as probably like politicians or these people like we see obviously in the spotlight, but like just sitting down in your classroom or sitting down in your university dorm and kind of just thinking about the universe and these formulas and these things that kind of build the world around us. And like the science is kind of like a battle, like, which is so cool.
That's fair. Yeah. Like I think for every like inspiring story that we've heard and we're going to explore, I think there are like so many people that like maybe got the same, like came to the same conclusion a little later. They got unlucky. There were so many people that spent their life trying to research something and they never got anywhere. But but like those, that's just important to keep in mind. Like for all of the like success stories we hear, there are so many people that tried and they and like every other profession, they couldn't get anywhere. But in some way, like they were still important to like the pursuit of like innovation, the pursuit of knowledge.
Guys, yeah, but don't pay attention to what Aditya said. Please pursue it. And like, I mean, that's the full thing, right? We were talking about it. If you're not the person who's going to take the risk of having a good, like, the risk, like how Aditya said, risk is at the center of it all. You have to take that risk. You have to be that either,
You
like
do.
you have. Oh wait, I'm going to like combine like really like many topics here. It's kind of like the Schrodinger's cat, 50% chance. Take it like that. Is the risk that you're taking. You're going to go forward into this world, like hopefully because you're watching a STEM podcast, and like whether you fail or not, you're going to bring about some change.
Right. I think even if the like odds are never in your favor, I think what we've discussed just teaches you that just the idea of like being able to make a difference, the idea of like maybe like and you one of your innovations being on a list of like the greatest inventions in the last 100 years of humanity is so appealing, and I think that is what drives science. Um, I think what I think we're going to end like with I think we're going to end this episode with like this time period, and we're going to pick up from around like 1950s next time. Do you have anything to conclude?
Yeah, just to conclude, guys, I hope you'll keep in mind everything we spoke about. It was a really cool and like honestly, at the end of it, I learned a lot more than I already knew, and that's also like another cool thing about science. You keep learning, and
Yeah,
yeah, so I hope you keep learning, keep it cool, and like watch the next episode, please.
yeah, guys, and take risk. Just don't build a nuclear bomb in your garage. Thanks, guys. See you all in the next episode.